The courtroom was packed that afternoon, buzzing with the quiet tension that only high-profile cases could summon. The walls, stained with age, and the echoes of countless verdicts, bore witness to a new day of judgment. His name was Elliot Gresham, and he wore a clean, pressed white shirt with sleeves rolled just above his elbows. There was calmness in his posture and clarity in his gaze, but to the eyes of Judge Alton Remington, calmness looked like arrogance, and clarity resembled defiance. The press sat in neat rows along the side, notebooks poised, cameras flashing intermittently. He was respected for his sharp tongue and infamous for his intolerance for what he deemed nonsense. At 72 years old, he considered himself the final word in any room, particularly one over which he presided. The case in question was minor, a misdemeanor involving a supposed trespassing. Yet the defendant and the judge had made it an unexpected headline. This is a courtroom, not a translation academy. We should not need to waste taxpayer dollars finding someone who understands an ancient tongue. The defendant, a tall black man in his mid-20s, stood at the front of the courtroom. Yes, Your Honor, my grandmother was from Angola. I learned it growing up. Judge Remington had sat on the bench for over 40 years. As the case moved forward, a curious issue came up. A disputed piece of evidence contained a passage in an obscure African dialect. The prosecutor glanced nervously at his papers. The defense attorney whispered something to his assistant. "Tell you what he said," voice dripping with mockery. "If you can accurately translate this text," he held up the document, "I will give you my annual salary, all $162,000 of it." The prosecution insisted it was critical. The defense attorney, however, had requested a delay to find an interpreter. The judge sighed heavily, tapping his gavel once, annoyed by the waste of time. He walked calmly to the document, took it in his hands, and began to read silently. "He lies with his mouth and steals with his eyes. He knows the back route through the village. If he escapes, our children will not wake." That is dramatic. Anyone could make that up. Can you prove it? Then, in a voice that resonated clearly through the courtroom, he began to translate. "Does no one here speak the dialect?" Judge Remington asked, peering over his glasses. There was silence. Suddenly, Elliot stepped forward. "I can translate it, Your Honor," he said, his voice clear and steady. Page 84 contains the same passage. You can verify it. The dialect is from the Bantu subgroup, precise, metaphorical, and contextual. You claim to speak asterisk. Ambu. Judge Remington raised a bushy eyebrow. She opened it before the judge and pointed to the passage. Elliot nodded. "I did it because justice must be based on understanding, not assumption. Language is not a trick, and culture is not a performance." The judge chuckled, not kindly. "Of course you did." Only discomfort remained. A rustle of laughter rose from the prosecution's table and a few seats in the gallery. The judge leaned forward, resting his chin on his hand. The courtroom gasped. "Translate this," he said again, "and my salary is yours." His tone made it clear. He expected Elliot to fail. Elliot's expression did not waver. "You must not trust the man in the blue coat." The courtroom fell into a hush. The judge squinted. Elliot turned to the clerk. "There is a library copy of Mbundu English translation by Joe Mendez in the Downtown University archives." Now the murmurs became Judge Remington shifted in his seat. "Even if you are correct," he said quickly, "I was joking. The court does not run on impulsive bets, but it does run on oaths and the truth," Elliot replied. The judge's mouth tightened. Before he could retort, the court clerk, having slipped from the room during the exchange, returned with an old textbook in hand. It matched word for word. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Journalists were already scribbling frantically. Judge Remington's face paled. "I believe the defendant has just educated us all," said the defense attorney quietly. The judge cleared his throat. "Well, that is ... impressive." But Elliot was not finished. He turned to the judge and addressed him with quiet composure. "I did not translate that to embarrass anyone." Remington looked at him, this time without mockery. "You spoke well," the judge said stiffly. "Let us proceed." The trial resumed, but the energy in the room had changed. People looked at Elliot differently now. No longer just a defendant, he had become a voice. The evidence in question was dismissed due to mishandling and lack of certified translation prior to submission. By the end of the session, the charges were dropped. Elliot was free to go, but the story did not end there. 1 week later, the story made headlines in local newspapers. Defendant outshines judge with fluent translation. Read 1. Another man challenges system with knowledge and wins. We would be honored to offer you a full scholarship. It caught the attention of Dr. Helen Atwater, the Dean of Linguistics at Langston University, a prestigious historically black college. She reached out to Elliot. "I read about what happened in the courtroom," she said when they met. Elliot was stunned. He excelled not only in language but in history, ethics, and law, because brilliance must be cultivated, and because it takes courage to stand for truth in a room full of people who do not expect it from you. He accepted the scholarship. Within months, he began attending classes at Langston University. He majored in African linguistics and cultural anthropology. By his second year, he was leading peer study sessions and had been invited to speak at national conferences. His keynote at the Global Translation Symposium was titled "The Power of the Overlooked Voice." It received a standing ovation. 4 years later, a newly built auditorium at Langston University held a special event. He unfolded it and read the passage once more. The topic: justice and misrepresentation in court systems. Justice must learn to listen. The keynote speaker, Elliot Gresham, now a published author, graduate with honors, and founder of the Courtroom Clarity Project, a nonprofit providing accurate translation and cultural representation in legal systems. He stepped onto the stage in a well-fitted navy blazer, holding the same courtroom document that had once been a joke. Then he paused. This document, he said, was intended to be laughed at. It was presented as unintelligible, dismissed as irrelevant, but in truth, it contained the key to understanding motive, direction, and guilt. He looked into the crowd. How many people are dismissed each day because they speak differently, look differently, or were not expected to understand? That must change. You turned a mockery into a mission. That takes more strength than I ever had. The crowd erupted in applause. After the event, an elderly man waited patiently in the line of those wishing to speak to Elliot. When it was his turn, he stepped forward. It was Judge Remington. He looked older than before, smaller. Somehow, I came to listen, he said, and to apologize. Elliot regarded him with surprise but also grace. Not about how he embarrassed a judge, but how he reminded a nation to respect the value of understanding. Your courtroom taught me more than you intended, Elliot said gently. The judge nodded. They shook hands, and with that, the cycle of mockery and silence ended in a rare kind of redemption. Years later, Elliot was appointed as Chief Language Equity Officer in the federal court system, working to ensure that no person, no matter their background or native tongue, would be dismissed or misrepresented. Each time he walked into a courtroom, someone whispered his story. He never claimed the judge's salary, but he gained something far greater. He earned respect. He gave others a voice, and he proved that truth, when spoken with clarity and conviction, always echoes louder than laughter.